Mark, thanks so much. That was an incredibly insightful and comprehensive lead-off talk on automation. You've really made a case for automation being one of the great change agents today within IT and throughout business. And you've given us a primer of sorts that we can reference to understand how to develop and continue our automation efforts. So thank you so much. So we're going to continue our look at the evolution of automation with our next guest. He's Marshall Bartoszek, EVP and Chief Value Officer for Orchestral.ai. Marshall, welcome. Before we get started, why don't you tell us a little bit about Orchestral.ai?
Thanks, Lenny. It's nice to be here. Let me give you a little quick overview on Orchestral.ai. Orchestral.ai was formed 7 years ago and went through a acquisition through Brocade. That's when I first met the StackStorm open source project. In that time, we developed an enterprise license version of the StackStorm project. And about a year ago, we spun our technology out of Extreme Networks and formed Orchestral.ai. So I'm really pleased to be here.
That's great. And we're pleased to have you. Hey, let's talk about Mark's keynote. It was so comprehensive. One of the things that he leaned into was a discussion about orchestration and automation and how they can develop within an organization. And I know that you have a lot of thoughts about that as well, and things that perhaps you can share with our audience in terms of how they look at developing those strategies.
Yeah, thanks. That's a great question. So from our standpoint, when we talk to large enterprise, Fortune 500 companies about where they are in their automation journey, the companies are in different stages. And that could be for several reasons. One is maybe from an expertise standpoint in-house, from a human capital standpoint. I know Mark talked a lot about the ability to make sure that your human capital within the organization is situated properly for taking advantage of automation. And from a standpoint of just where they are from an infrastructure standpoint as an organization. So when we talk to our clients, we inquire about where they are in the journey of automation. And there's a study that talks about the 5 stages of automation, and we're true believers on asking and understanding where a company is in their steps of automation. And there's really 5 stages of automation. And the first stage is, back, 10, 15 years ago, where people weren't automating at all. They were getting on the command line within the different various pieces of equipment and managing that infrastructure from a direct hands-on standpoint. And then that was not scaling very well. So approximately 10 years ago, the vendor started getting a much more ambitious around, hey, we need to automate within our technology itself. And that was typically vendor-led technology based on customer feedback. The third stage of that automation journey is starting around where they started doing more than just simple automation. They started doing, maybe OS upgrades, piecing and stringing together multiple activities around automation. And that was the third stage of automation. And then the fourth stage is where we find customers between the third and the fourth stage. And that's really where they start doing cross-domain automation. And cross-domain automation means within your stacks, maybe the security team did some interesting automation with their primary vendor, or the networking team worked with their primary and secondary vendors to do something interesting around automation. But now there's business process automation where it goes across the different domains within IT and also touches your core systems that run the business. So the ability to do cross-domain automation is where we see clients today primarily highly interested in doing something with cross-domain automation. Once you have done cross-domain automation, then that sets up the stage for really taking it to the next level where I know this is the dream of all IT organizations, is to have an autonomous infrastructure where the cross-domain automation sets the basis for your organization, and then you can implement AI, ML type technologies to really start reducing the need for your human capital to do a bunch of mundane tasks. I mean, if you analyze some of the workers in IT, I think Mark talked about the study where there's a lot of frustration in IT around the 80% of their job is done on mundane, monotonous tasks, and they don't feel like they're being challenged at work. They're not getting the full advantages of their career, and that's the feedback they're getting from employee surveys. And we agree that we see the same issues from our standpoint on the vendor side. So our goal is to help organizations through those stages of automation with the goal of creating an autonomous infrastructure to free up your human capital and use your human capital more effectively and more efficiently.
Hey, you mentioned a few times, let's pick up on the people and process aspects of automation. Again, any lessons learned that you can share in terms of what steps to take to ensure both things are in sync with the technology adoption?
Yeah, Mark talked a little bit about it. What we find is there must be a sponsor within the organization at a high enough level that recognizes the need that it's not domain specific automation that's going to really help the organization. There's tons of different tools from different vendors that allow you to silo automate your infrastructure, but going cross domain is really a very big deal, and it's not easy to do. So the only way to really properly do this is to have an IT leader that understands the value to their business and allows the business to become more agile in how they have to compete with their competitors, and sponsor the new thinking within IT that doing it the old way is not going to scale, and we're not going to get more resources, and we must do something around cross-domain automation to set up a future of AI ML. So there's many different use cases around the ability to do that. I mean, it could be simple things from, simplified patch management. We find so many organizations that have various groups that are managing patch management for their server infrastructure. And we all know the famous story about Equifax and what happened with the inability to properly manage the patch management of their infrastructure, to sophisticated workflows where it's completely tied into your ServiceNow or Remedy systems and manage the entry of a ticket. And there is a whole process that kicks off to either start a new provision service or do some sort of a change management within your infrastructure. All those type of systems need to touch various components within the infrastructure, regardless if it's security, networking, storage, virtualized infrastructure, or even into the cloud. Of course, the ability to do cross-domain orchestration also includes managing your infrastructure in your cloud efficiently and effectively.
Marshall, you're in the middle of many automation efforts, of course. Automation is either, people have sort of adverse reactions to it occasionally. I'm just curious, are you seeing that, or is there generally a reception and an interest in automation? And if there is some questions about it, how would you respond, or what's the best way to sort of help people get comfortable with automation?
Yeah, everybody's different. So there's going to be people within the organization that like their current role, their current knowledge base, and they're not really interested in changing. But there is a whole nother group within an organization that's looking for inspired leadership that is willing to learn new things and new technology and increase their skills given the opportunity by the organization to be able to do that. So it's, once again, it goes back to the leadership of IT. They got to be able to, they have to be able to shine the light and show a direction. Like Mark was talking about, the ability to actually show a direction and be aggressive in the way they want to go and lead the automation effort to become more efficient as an organization. And certain people will step up and take a hands-on approach to lead the automation effort that will cross domains. It's not always easy to be able to do cross-domain automation, but with the right effort, with the right leadership, with the right skill sets that can be added, companies are doing it successfully today.
Right. Hey, let's move to the sort of intersection of automation and AI. I was thinking about this. AI and automation is like peanut butter and jelly. They're great alone, and they're even better when they're together. What's your story, and how will AI and automation evolve? And are they on potentially separate paths, or are they always intertwined?
Well, our belief they're going to be completely intertwined in the future. There's a lot of studies from the major analyst organizations about some of the frustration around the traditional AI ML tools, and at putting in a AI based tool that takes 6 to 12 months to learn the infrastructure doesn't return enough value. And it can be frustrating for certain IT leadership because there was a lot of promise on the pre-sale side, but once they get into the implementation part, it was more challenging. We believe that an organization to truly take advantage of an autonomous infrastructure, you really need to lay in that orchestration layer that sits above the IT domains, the silos within IT that can cross-domain orchestrate and also be vendor agnostic. So the ability to lay in an orchestration layer as a foundation to a proper AI ML infrastructure, we think that's a really critical need. Because at the end of the day, what should AI be doing for you within IT? The AI system should be able to recognize an issue, diagnose the root cause, and then actually take action. Give the operator the ability to have the choice. Do I want to do it myself? Because now I understand where the problems are in the infrastructure, or click yes, auto remediate, and the AI engine is smart enough and tied to the orchestration layer where they can go into the infrastructure and repair the issue without human intervention.
And so will AI and automation, will they be integrated, or as an IT department, am I going to have to figure out how to bring those things together?
There will be the ability through API infrastructure capabilities where you'll be able to couple together various components. But the best solution is going to be one where it's more loosely coupled, that provides the full end-to-end capability from automation to orchestration to artificial intelligence within IT. That's where we're going as an organization, and we think that's the right approach.
Great. Hey, we've just got a few minutes left. Any advice, or I'm just starting out on automation on the journey? Any advice in terms of where to start, what opportunities to look for? What's been your experience with your customers?
So my colleague Dale and I always talk about the crawl, walk, run capabilities. So you can have a desire to be running fast, but you have to start slowly, and you have to have the right personnel. You have to have the right sponsorship within IT. And then you need to pick off, I'll call it the low hanging fruit, to kind of get the team engaged in understanding the power of what they've been given. And if just given an open mind with that team, what they can actually do to change the organization in a very appropriate and fantastic way. So we really believe in sponsorship from the executive side of IT, and then having a center of excellence that really focuses on, let's not try to boil the ocean on day one. Let's figure out one or two use cases that we can automate. And if you chose the right tool, it can automate anything within IT. So you got to start slow. You got to get your feet underneath you, crawl first, have a win, demonstrate the value back to the organization, and now you're off to the races. Now you can start building your team, and you can start polling your different user groups within IT and also within the business to understand where is the next value that you can deliver to the organization from an automation and orchestration standpoint.
And in terms of sort of charting value, any recommendations on how that's done? I mean, it can be a complex question, but again, any tips to track that?
Yeah. So obviously, the easiest approach is always hard dollar savings, and that's not always easiest to prove. But Mark made a really good point in the keynote where it's not necessarily reducing your headcount, and it depends on where you are as an organization. It also can be the ability to not have to hire additional people in the future, so offsetting future headcount requirements because you're able to automate that type of capability within your organization.
Fantastic. Hey, Marshall, thanks so much. Thanks for sharing your insights and experience. I want to remind everybody that you can visit with Orchestral.ai on the platform here, along with the other sponsors. And I want to also encourage you again to engage with our speakers and each other, and hope that you have a great experience here and enjoy the rest of the day. Again, Marshall, thank you.
Yeah, Lenny, thanks for having me this morning. I really appreciate it.